very different cases for the jurors to consider, but whose side will they take? Back with you now, my studio audience and guests. Also joining me is jury consultant Jo Ellen Demetrius. Jo Ellen Demetrius, you're an expert in juries. It's obviously an unusual makeup, this jury. 6 women, 5 mothers, 5 white mothers, women. What difference will that make, do you think, to the dynamic in that jury room, if anything?
Well, I think it will make a difference. If you look at your show just over the past couple of weeks when you've had multiple women on that have a disagreement about a particular topic, you can see how animated they get.
I'm glad you said that.
Yes, and I was actually involved on one of those panels.
I know you were. Yeah, kind of thing no man can get away with saying, but I'm sure that's true. I'm also sure that although they won't be aware of the huge attention the trial is getting on television, they will be aware, I'm sure, before that this was potentially going to be a big story, wouldn't they?
Oh, of course they are. I mean, let me give you an example. What a sequestered jury gets as a newspaper in the morning looks something like this. Right.
So you know it's on the front page, you just don't know what it says.
That's right, and the whole paper looks like that.
Yeah.
So definitely they know it's a big story. Many of them knew a lot about the case before they were even selected as jurors.
Jeffrey Tubman, we were just discussing in the break there about this issue, whether anything will change. You made an interesting point about that.
Well, you know, the politics of gun control have changed so much. In 1968, Robert F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King are assassinated. The immediate reaction is the Gun Control Act of 1968. That was how we responded. Now, for a big part of the country, when there are terrible acts of gun violence, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, the answer is more guns. Right. Guns in schools, guns on the street. And that's, you know, we here on West 58th Street, which is not the whole country, have to recognize that a lot of people out there see these guns
A lot of people have
differently.
said to me, you know what would have stopped this? If Trayvon Martin had had a gun too. And Judge Hatchett, when I hear that, I despair for America. Because I think, how can that possibly be the way that you resolve this kind of situation going forward? You don't just go and arm everybody else too.
I know.
Do you?
No, you don't. And I just, my heart, as I've told you before, just bleeds over the situation. But I did have an interesting question today. Someone said to me, well, Judge, why didn't George just pull his gun and say, I'm a neighborhood watch, stay where you are until the police gets here? I mean, he's the one who has the gun. Why didn't he do that?
Well, he doesn't have a right to do that because that would be an aggravated assault. And I suspect, and this is just pure suspicion, I suspect that he did pull his gun. I think that gun was out, and because I think it's hard to get it out when he's on top of you. But he never would admit that, and he had no right. He would have no legal right, to pull a gun on somebody who's not committing a crime.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I thought it was really interesting with the use of force expert who, the prosecution was cross-examining him, said if Zimmerman is being straddled by Trayvon Martin, how easy would it be for him to get the gun out of his waist belt?
Yeah. But I think they were forcing the question to make the point that they thought that he did that anyway.
Right.
That he approached him with the gun and that Trayvon was defending himself in response.
Jeff, the point you were going to make.
Well, the defense is that he got out of the car and then he was just assaulted. It's not that, I mean, I don't know, obviously I don't know what happened, but we should be clear that his defense is not that he chased him down, is that he got out of the car and Trayvon was on him.
Judge Alex, I mean, you've presided over these kind of cases before.
Unfortunately.
Did you find George Zimmerman, not through testimony he gave, but through all the statements that we heard, did you find him a convincing character to listen to? Did you believe his story?
I actually did. I mean, my suspicion about him possibly pulling out the gun, and that's all it is because it explains a lot of things like why Trayvon might jump him if he thinks this crazy cracker is pulling a gun and he might be in danger. And it also explains the difficulty of getting a gun out when somebody's on top of you. But when he tells the story, for him to have made it up, he made it up immediately after the shooting, within seconds of a witness coming out from the apartment. He would have to be brilliant to know. He doesn't know who watched. He doesn't know if anybody videotaped. He doesn't know what forensic evidence they're going to find on the floor. And yet the story he told with minor inconsistencies, does coincide with the physical evidence in almost every material way.
And I've seen enough of George Zimmerman to know he's not brilliant. So honestly, I think what it is that George Zimmerman believes the story that he's telling, and that's why this is complex. I think initially we wanted a very flat, simple, easy story, which was this crazy racist saw a black kid and decided to go on a killing spree.
Well, and it is more complicated.
And I don't think that's true. I
agree.
I think he made some bad assumptions. I think he saw a young black male and saw violence and danger in Trayvon's body, which itself is a racist assumption. But I don't think in his own mind he said, oh, there's a black kid, I'm going to go kill him. That's why I think it's messy. And I also agree with you, Judge Alex, that there's no way you see this big, scary black guy and you're going to approach him and you don't pull your gun first. Right. It's not possible.
Especially since he's already led himself to believe that he's a dangerous criminal because he's watching him run from him, he's watching him pull the hood up. Everything is kind of building towards this guy is up to no good. I think it's like...
But don't forget, George Zimmerman's nose is broken. The only injuries are on George Zimmerman.
But his injuries are not that bad.
They're not that good.
We don't actually even know. We don't actually even know for a fact his nose was broken. He never had an X-ray.
But it doesn't matter.
He never had stitches. But here's the thing. We were portrayed a picture of a guy who had to shoot Trayvon Martin because he genuinely feared he was about to be killed himself.
No, that's not the law. The law is that you have to be in fear of imminent danger of great bodily harm or death.
Right. I don't have a problem with the self-defense.
But a bang on the nose and a few scratches on your head, does that qualify?
Going back and looking at the perspective of the fact that as a neighborhood watch commander, he is taught to observe, report, and be a good witness.
And the only thing that applies to, though, is if you're going to go ahead and have them picked off the neighborhood watch. You know, they spend a lot of time talking about the guidelines for neighborhood watch. Those aren't the elements of a crime. The elements of a crime have nothing to do with that.
Let's take a short break.
They're not an element of a crime, but it shows his intent. I mean, if he's been taught this, then to leave the car is beyond his training. And you got to wonder if those jurors are thinking, what happened that he actually left that car to go after Trayvon?
Okay, let's take a short break. When we come back, the defense use of force expert that Joanne just mentioned, Dennis Root, is in the audience here tonight. We'll talk to him after the break about his testimony and what he thinks the verdict will be.